When I was struggling with my mental health, one of the biggest obstacles I had to overcome was being willing to talk to someone. And for some of you, you may be in that same state where you don't want to leave your home. You don't trust anyone in your community that you can talk with. I want to introduce you to BetterHelp. They have licensed therapists that is able to take you and actually talk to you via Zoom so you can do it from the comfort of your own home. These are licensed therapists. You can talk about faith or you cannot talk about faith. It doesn't matter. They're going to have something specific just for you. If you would like to receive a 10% discount for your first initial call, all you got to do is check out BetterHelp in the show notes below.
Both of my parents ingested a lethal amount of fentanyl. My mom was prescribed fentanyl pain patch. My dad was on OxyContin. So here's the thing. I think in this society, we have this vision of like what an addict is. It's not the case at all. Everyone around us knows someone that is battling addiction. And my parents' battle with addiction was very concealed. And I think a lot of that was because they felt the weight of it, the shame of it, knowing there's this stigma and the shame that's attached to it. And I think they were afraid to speak up and get the help that they needed.
Hey, I'm comedian Mickey Bell. It's that time again. Time for our Get Over It podcast where we are talking to successful people. And what we're doing is we're taking their stories and we're kind of digging in a little deeper so you can learn how they overcame setbacks, major obstacles to become the success that you know of them today. Because here's what I want you to understand. You can become successful. You can overcome things just like they did and just like I did. And I want you to hear their story. So, hey, real quick, before we jump into today's episode, I want you to share it with someone. I want you to find someone on social media and I want you to tag them, send them a message, give them a phone call. Take your laptop to their house. I don't care. But I want you to get them on this show because if there's someone who can encourage you and motivate you, it's going to be the guest that I have today. She is a personal friend of mine who currently serves as a sideline reporter for ESPN. She has turned tragedy into triumph, and you're going to hear about it. And you're also going to find out what is known as the sideline Shimmy. Oh, it's going to be good. Lauren Sisler is joining us because it's time to get over it. Lauren Sisler, when people told me that I needed to book podcast guest, you were the first. Yeah. You were the first because you and I go back to a CBS affiliate in Birmingham, Alabama, and you were the sports director, correct?
I didn't really have the sports director title.
You did the work and somebody else got the title. And I'm not going to mention his name because y'all are good friends and he's a very cool dude. So I'm not going to mention that name. But no. And I was doing traffic at the time, a traffic reporter. And then we got a new news director in and I didn't have the female body parts that he liked. So I got canned and had to move on to something else. But no, you. So you came in. But no, you. I mean, when you left CBS 42, like your career just skyrocketed. And I told you before, and I'm going to do it publicly, I am so stinking proud of everything you have accomplished because you got the family you wanted, you got the little baby you wanted, you got the career, and you've just got a lot of great things going on right now.
I know. Well, I appreciate that. I'm very thankful to be where I'm at now. It's been a long journey. I know we'll get into it, but yes, very thankful for a loving husband and a little baby. He's 14 months old now. It's just hard to believe.
That's
like
hard
growing
to believe.
so fast. I know. It's wild. But love being a mom. It's hard being on the road a lot and being a mom just because I feel like now even more than ever, like my heart just, I want to be home with my baby, so he'll travel with me some, but it gets more difficult too. He's moving around, when on the plane, he wants to walk and wants to run and wants to play. So we're just, we're figuring this thing out.
Well, listen, if Kirk Herbstreit can travel with Ben, the dog, then you ought to be able to travel with your child and no problem.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
Yeah, son, just lay down on the ground here at my feet while I do this interview. It's
exactly.
So cool. Now take me back. We're going to go back a little ways. I want to know a little bit about your childhood because you're very athletic. We're going to get more into that, but I want to know a little bit about your childhood. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Roanoke, Virginia. And it was my mom and my dad and my older brother, Alan. And we were one of those typical busy families, always on the go. My brother was a 3-sport athlete playing sports. My dad was a volunteer coach for most of his athletics. And then I was the gymnast over here, and look, like, I'm sitting down right now, but I'm 5'9", way too tall to be a gymnast. Way too tall. Everyone's like gymnast, like basketball, volleyball, like
Volleyball, yeah,
gymnast.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, no, that's it.
So you
Here
were a
we are.
gymnast, and not only were you a gymnast, you actually were pretty good.
I mean,
I
I mean,
mean,
I will say I did my career picked up and took off pretty quick. So I was a level 10 gymnast by time I was the age 10. So I moved pretty quickly at a quick clip in terms of kind of growing in my gymnastics career. And then a lot of injuries and things happened, but thankfully, I wanted to earn that scholarship and was able to sign my letter of intent and officially became a Scarlet Knight. So Rutgers University, the State University of New Jersey, y'all.
that is so cool. So as a gymnast, what do you call it? No, what each individual, like you got the vault
Apparatus. So you have each
apparatus.
individual apparatus, and it's vault, bars, beam, and floor.
Okay.
Those are the four in women's gymnastics. And I would say I excelled at most events, not at vault. That was my worst. I sucked at vault.
Was that because of your height though? I mean, because you're jumping and flipping.
Partially, I think though, but it was never a strong suit of mine, even when I was smaller and more petite. But as I just was never a good event for me. I just never excelled in it. And of course, this was back when it was a vault, not a table. So
Right.
it used to be like a horse,
Yeah.
a horse shape is what they called it. And then it turned into a table right when I went into college. And I'm like, why are you going to change the apparatus on my absolute worst event? Like, don't do this to me. Like, no.
I just figured the other one out.
Thankfully, though, when you go to college, you kind of end up having like a specialty, right? So, like in club gymnastics, when you're growing up, all four events, like there's no
got to
choice.
do 'em all.
You do all four events.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you get to college, number one, my body, like shelf life, like I'm done. I'm tapped out. So, like, let's figure out what events she can contribute on. So, bars and floor became my two specialties and the two events that I enjoyed doing the most. And I felt like I excelled at them pretty good. So.
Well, since we're talking about that, what was your opinion of the Olympics?
Oh, so much fun. Men's and women's both, man. What a fun, atmosphere, and just watching the men and women both compete, and the men winning the bronze was such a huge moment for them, and of course the women coming back. And I have an affinity for Simone Biles, of course, just like what she's been through. They've got a documentary out on her now on Netflix. I'm hoping, would assume that they're going to be adding more episodes because this was all pre-Olympics. But I feel like that moment in time back in 21 when they were competing in the Tokyo Olympics, like that whole situation with her having the mental block and having to bail out, as one would call it. Even watching the documentary and going back and watching the media clips and like the podcast and the people talking about it, be like, she quit, she gave up. It's just like, no, like you have to understand the sport of gymnastics to know, like, she was in so much danger. And this documentary really puts it in perspective, because in gymnastics, we are conditioned to perfection, right? But we also are conditioned to have poise. And so literally we could be the most nervous wreck underneath it all, but on the outside we portray like, oh, we're not nervous at all, like we're out here floating on water, like, you know what I mean, like, woo. That's not the case. And so I think that documentary really brings it to perspective. But I just love like that she came back. The fact that she did it at 27 years old is unheard of. Like, gymnastics is not a sport. Like, you peak at 12, 13, 14 years old, and it's all downhill from there.
You just count
like,
down the days after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So
That
it's
is crazy.
unlike any other sport in that regard. But with that being said, yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. Just, cool to see Suni Lee, who obviously went to Auburn, did a couple years there, and then went back in the Olympics. Just to see that team and the U.S. have just, another magical season, magical year, and kind of like the redemption tour, especially for Simone, was really cool. So,
yeah, whenever you talk about that mental block, when you're doing flips and flying in the air, that's not the moment that you need to be having any type of block that you can't concentrate, because not only is the scoring like 1/100th of a second could be the difference. I mean, you're putting your body in a position to where you could really hurt yourself.
oh yeah, I mean, it's so dangerous. It is so dangerous. And I had a moment of the twisties back when I was in club gymnastics. I actually was at this gym in Martinsville, Virginia, a small gym. It was one of those meets where like you just kind of get going, you do it to sort of get a meet under your belt, get comfortable, get ready for state competition, that sort of thing. And I remember ripping off the bars and warm-ups on this uprise handstand, and it literally landed on my neck, like, so scary. And flipping, coming down off the high bar like that. I mean, it was a terrifying moment for me. And I remember just like being scared, got up, kept going, of course. But the rest of the meet, I just had this mental block. And like I would go over to the floor exercise and I'd be warming up and I'd start balking on skills. And you talk about that, you're flipping through there. Like you have to commit. And if you decommit while you're in the middle of the air, like it is trouble. Like
Yeah.
you're talking crash and burn,
I can't imagine.
dangerous. And it's all like, it's up here. And it's where like you don't compute, like body, mind doesn't compute. And I actually had this mental block where I was balking on skills. And, basically my coaches and my mom like talked and said, all right, we're pulling her out. We're not doing the rest of this competition. It's not worth it. Went back a year later and still had the same mental block. So I'm in that same arena and it's just, it all comes flooding back. And I'm like, oh no. And my mom and coach are like, we're done. Like, we're done. We're not doing this. And it was just, that was the last time I went and competed at that gym, but it's real. Like, and I know I'm a little biased. I was a gymnast, but gymnasts are extremely tough athletes. It is a very, very dangerous sport. And, you got to have that mindset and that resilience, but Simone goes to show it can happen to anybody and everybody. And it likely will. Like, that's the thing. At some point in your gymnastics career, you will probably have some sort of mental block that will keep you from doing skills and performing at a high level, because it's that difficult. And just to make your body and brain do all the things that it does, it's beyond me. Like, I don't even know how I did it for, 21 years.
I don't get it. I don't know how. I mean, I know how hard it is for me to try to do a flip off the diving board, and I'm landing in water. I can't comprehend. I can't comprehend that.
And belly flops don't feel good either. Let me tell you.
And the fact, though, that she had the strength to be able to say no. That's what I respect.
That's resilience. Yeah. That right there is resilience to me. I mean,
that took a lot more than being able to do all the flips and do everything that she's accomplished. I'm proud of her for that sort of thing. But to be able to say, you know what? I value my life and I don't care what people say. I'm out.
Right. Yeah.
That was cool. And so when did you start moving into sports journalism?
That actually happened when I was at Rutgers. I wanted to be a sports doctor, mostly because I'd had all these injuries and had, setbacks and this and that. And I was like, being a sports doctor would be such a cool career path, right? Because now, I can empathize with these athletes, getting them back out on the field of play. And it was in college, as we'll dig into my story a little bit more, but I had to take a step back and be like, all right, like, this isn't working out for me. I was failing out of school failing miserably, and realized like, I got to change course here. I've got to do something different. And so we ended up, I say we, because I feel like it ends up being a group effort, as someone on the gymnastics team, the decision was made, let's switch course. Broadcasting felt like a good fit. I love storytelling, relationships, love sports. I just felt like it could be a good opportunity. And so made the switch and never looked back. So, that was really kind of midway through my college career where I decided that's what I wanted to do, which is kind of odd. I will say a little bit unique in the fact that most people that want to be broadcasters typically are born into it or born with that notion. Like, I want to be on TV. I want to do these things. I want to be a broadcaster. For me, it was obviously a much later dream of mine in life. And I would say that what's, I guess, unique about it too, is like, at some point I said, I want to be on ESPN. At some point, I remember my parents always talking about Lauren's going to be on ESPN one day, but it's funny because it wasn't for sports broadcasting. It was for gymnastics. Right. Like, oh, she's going to be on ESPN one day. So it's kind of cool because it's come full circle, mostly covering college football, but I also do cover some college gymnastics. So I, in fact, reached that dream.
You did.
Even though it was a dream that was seemingly different at that time. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of come full circle. Yeah.
And you also became Flavor Flav at the same time.
Flavor Flav. Let me tell y'all want to see this thing? I gotta tell you.
I want you to show it. This is so cool.
I know, and I'm so mad I didn't charge it up for y'all. I'd love to be able to show you how this thing works. With all the stuff. Okay, so this is from Vanny Creations. So they are BYU, like BYU's official there's signage around the stadium, and like the big light up signs with like the cool like neon light behind, kind of sort of what you have there, but like if you put the BYU Cougar and then they have like a pretty blue light behind it. Right. Well, this thing actually eliminates, and I'm so upset that I don't have it charged up for you, because it actually eliminates, and you can turn it on. I have an app that actually allows this thing to light up and be the color that I pick, pink, green, blue, whatever I want it to be. And it has my name on it. It's very cool. They even put like a little Easter egg on there, the Sports Center thing. So they actually made these last year for, It was BYU's first home game in the Big 12. And so these guys at Vandy Creations were like, we're going to make you something special. It even says, Lauren, congratulations on taking part in history and being a commentator for BYU football's inaugural Big 12 home game. Here's this keepsake from this momentous day from your friends at Vandy Creations and BYU.
That
Like,
is
how
so
cool is that?
cool.
And I'm like traipsing to the airport. I have it in this like special box over here, and I'm like guarding it with my life. I said, "Yo, this is like," and I didn't realize like what a great, first of all, cool keepsake, but like what a great piece of like decoration. So I keep it back here. It's very heavy,
That's
y'all.
a thick chain.
It's a thick chain, man. But let me tell you, woo,
That
I
is
love
so cool.
it. But yeah, it lights up. So I got to get this charged up for my next gig because
That's cool.
it's pretty cool. Yeah.
That is cool.
Sisler. Well, it's all right. Let me get this back here real quick, y'all. And
Yeah, get it set because I didn't realize it had your name until you brought it forward. That is so cool. That is so cool.
Everything. Yeah.
So how did you end up in Alabama?
So Alabama, it's like being recruited for athletics, right? You send out your resume tape all over the country, hope somebody takes a chance on you. Well, thankfully, they took a chance on me at CBS 42. So really that was the story. Nothing more to it other than I had bounced around a couple different TV stations, was at my hometown station. I was in Parkersburg, West Virginia, a pretty small station. Put together a resume tape or demo reel, if you will, and sent it all over the country for job openings, and Birmingham happened to have one, which ended up being a great landing spot. 2011, as Nick Saban and company are building that dynasty at Alabama. And it was really kind of the precursor to SEC Network landing in the SEC as part of ESPN, and just being in a good spot to really grow and learn under some great leadership and some great people that have kind of held my hand along the way and sort of built me up. So Jim Dunaway being one of them. I know he's been someone that I would definitely credit for getting me out of my shell, so to speak. Because when I first got to Birmingham, well, let me tell you, I was raw.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing. I had like 4 words that would come out of my mouth. I was like, oh yeah, Jim, that sounds great. I had to shake off the nerves a little bit and kind of get comfortable doing this whole TV thing. And,
Jim's the man. In Alabama, Jim is the man. So I need you to prove something for me. This has nothing to do with you, has nothing to do with me, but for the people all over the world, I need you to reinforce the fact that, yes, Alabama football and Auburn football is serious in the state of Alabama.
Oh, man, let me tell you. So I tell this to people. It's funny. I was at Rutgers, right? So my freshman year, 2002, we were 1-11 my freshman year. So we were on the struggle bus, y'all. Struggle bus. So I was, I'm still going to the game, still, all the pageantry and the traditions and enjoying college football for what it was. But then I get here to Alabama and it's like, whoa, like what is this, right? Totally different deal. So it's kind of cool, just getting to come here and experience college football. And again, I think being here, getting to experience it, getting to travel, because we were the CBS affiliate, right? So we had the CBS package.
Oh, we had
so
it.
we were getting to travel all over the place. To all the games, every home and away game we were going to. So, we were going to Starkville, we were going to Oxford, we were going to Texas A&M, we were going to Missouri, everywhere. So we were traveling to every stadium. So it was really cool to kind of check those stadiums off the bucket list, so to speak, and get to experience them because they all are unique and have their own sort of like traditions and things that are really cool. So some are bigger than others, obviously, in Tennessee and Alabama, Texas. You have these huge stadiums. Some of them are a little smaller, but still pack a lot of punch. So it's really cool just to kind of go and experience the fandom and the traditions and pageantry that come with college football.
That is so cool. And people, they always want to ask when they find out I'm from Alabama. Of course, every question, Alabama or Auburn, and then you have to choose. And they're like, do you really have to choose when you move to that state? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's a given.
Well, it is a thing. And I will say my big default is I went to Rutgers. So when I wear red, it is not crimson, it is scarlet. So I have to remind people of that. But, it's one of those things that, in my industry, can't really pick an allegiance. But
that saved you, though. That actually saved you.
It did save me. Yeah. And I will say this, like you definitely fall in love with the teams that you cover. So it's not so much like I pick one over the other. It's just if I'm in the locker room covering them on that day, like I'm cheering for them. I'm rooting for them because I want to see these teams and kids that put in all this hard work succeed. So it is hard to be on the other side of it too and see the losing team because, I struggle so much when we get to like the national championship and you see like just like the imagery at the end of the game, you see the celebration and the excitement, and then other side, you
Yeah.
see the sadness.
Yeah.
I literally I'm so torn by it because I'm like, oh my gosh, amazing for this team. But then, oh, by the way, over here, I'm just so sad for this team.
Right.
It's hard.
So did you ever get to ask Coach Saban a question?
A question, like in general?
Like, as far as, in the press, he's doing his little press conference
Oh yeah.
because, he's known for ripping up a reporter every now and again if
Yeah.
you asked a stupid question.
If you ask a dumb question, he didn't like hypotheticals whatsoever, which is funny now because he's on College Game Day. So he's technically a colleague of mine now, and now he's having to talk hypotheticals
Yes.
all day long.
I loved it.
It's so great.
The first week of game day, he's like, y'all, I don't care about my pick. No one really knows. We've not seen anything yet.
I know. I love that. Yeah. He's great. I will say the intimidation factor is real, dude. I for sure was very intimidated by Alabama head coach Nick Saban when I first got to Alabama. And I think part of that was because I'd been so accustomed to Frank Beamer over at Virginia Tech, because that's what I had been used to covering. And Frank is just very, he's a coach. So you can't really say any coach is laid back, but like he very much just, had a certain air about him and just a presence about him and a, hey, how are you doing? And a handshaker and a this and that. And then I got to Alabama and it was like, this is a very buttoned up program and obviously led by Nick Saban. And so there was an intimidation factor. And it was like, okay, eventually I'm going to have to get over this. And I will say I ended up with CBS 42, did a one-on-one with him. So I will say, I did get to ask a couple questions from time to time. I would, generate a little nerve inside of me to raise my hand and ask for the microphone.
Yeah,
I got a question for Coach. So I get up there and talk, ask a question. But then getting to do that one-on-one kind of broke the ice for me, I think, with Coach Saban. And then I have done some of his radio shows in the past, before games, game week on a Thursday night,
Right.
go do a radio show and ask questions and do that as well. So it gets easier, but there's still that preparation and wanting to make sure you ask the right questions. And, I think that there's a way to have those conversations. And then too, I think a lot of it's just getting to know these people under the surface, right? It's important to me to get to know them outside of just the sport of football.
He also doesn't like comparisons.
Nah.
He doesn't want to compare this year's running back with the last year's running back. He don't want to talk about that. Are you a car enthusiast or a do-it-yourself mechanic? Boy, do I have a deal for you. I have found a place that believes in what I believe in. They stand for conservative values. They don't go after that woke agenda. Plus, they have the best prices in auto parts. Get your parts where I get them. Kane Auto Supply. No more running around town trying to find the right parts. They're on their way to me. Why wait? Get your auto parts shipped directly to you, fastest and the best prices. Kane Auto Supply, a proud sponsor of the Get Over It podcast. So if you learn what he likes and what he dislikes, you know the questions to ask. Well, we've talked about the successes through college, through all the things you've gotten to experience now. Married with a young boy, just it's awesome. But you've had your moments of struggle. You've had some setbacks. You've had some major obstacles to overcome to get to where you are today. I'm just going to give you the floor and let you just kind of share what you want to share about that and some of the things that you had to overcome mentally and emotionally to be able to be where you are today.
Whew. It has been a journey, let me tell you. It's been a wild and crazy journey. Thankful for this opportunity to be sitting here, to be talking with you, to be sharing my story. So, we talked about sort of my childhood, growing up into gymnastics and then going to Rutgers and living out my dream, wanted to be a sports doctor, doing the prerequisites, doing everything that I had dreamed of and hoped for. And also the same dreams that my parents had for me as a young athlete. And, it was an awesome experience getting to go away from home and have this team and this camaraderie and these people that truly believed in you and wow, I'm living it up. I'm living out this dream. And fast forward to my second semester, it was March of 2003. And I picked up the phone like I always did, called my parents. We always talked on the phone. A lot of kids go off to college and they're kind of like, oh, mom and dad, I'll talk to them later or whatever. But
See
for
you at
me, no,
Thanksgiving.
yeah, I was like, no, my mom always wanted a play by play. She wanted to know everything I was doing in gymnastics. And then my
Yeah.
father just always just checking in, right? Just checking in, wanted to make sure everything was okay. And I talked to my mom and dad both that night. And we said our I love you, said goodbye, hung up the phone. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Everything seemed fine. And I wake up to a phone call in the middle of the night from my dad to let me know that my mom died.
Mm.
And it was like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, I just talked to mom. She's 45 years old. It's the middle of the night. What could have happened? And what happened, dad? And he just said, Lauren, I can't explain it now. Get on the next plane you can. I'll be at the airport to pick you up. And unfortunately, he never did show up that day. Instead, it was my uncle and my cousin who came to the airport to let me know that my dad too had passed away. And within a matter of 5 hours, I learned that not only my mom passed, but my dad. And I think, the hardest part with that too is like, it was already a nightmare that my mom had passed, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to go home. I'm going to run and jump in my dad's arms. I'm going to feel his embrace. He's going to make everything okay. Like that's what I was hopeful for. Right. And then that evaporated. And so it felt like I was just alone, alone and like in this just space of like not understanding like how, why, how, like how did we get here? It would be many years before I would actually be able to like come to grips with all of it, from the shock and the devastation and also the shame.
Did you know that there were issues before that, or was it just a total blindside moment for you?
Total blindside moment. And so, obviously they pass away. The questions start getting raised like why, how, what happened here? And at the time, I knew like my parents were taking medication. I knew that they were going to a pain management doctor. I knew that they were being prescribed heavy narcotics, didn't understand the magnitude of it and didn't understand it was a problem, right? You're going to a doctor, you're taking a prescription, it makes you feel better, it gets you out of bed in the morning. My parents were very functional, they were very present in our lives. So nothing seemed, out of the ordinary.
Right.
We're going through life. My brother's in the Navy. He's stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. I'm in Rutgers. Like, we're having conversations. Everything seemed pretty normal. Looking back though, hindsight 2020, and there's definitely some things I'm like, whoa, like, okay, maybe some signs that there was some addiction, some things where, just falling asleep really easily, being checked out, some anger issues when medication would run out. But my parents did such a good job of hiding it, right? They did such a good job of masking it from everybody else. And I think that's the thing, right? Like, so it complete shock when this all happened. And then here's the thing, Mickey, like I literally ran from reality. Like I did everything I could to escape what actually happened to my parents. So it would be years, believe it or not, 10 years as I'm sitting on the couch at the Foundry in Bessemer, Alabama, doing a story for CBS 42 in which I came clean and literally opened the toxicology reports for the first time and said, this is what happened to my parents. I'm seeing it on paper for the first time. I'm reading it. I'm acknowledging it.
You waited that long to even read the reports?
Yep. Wow. Now, I will say around the 7-year mark is when I started to accept it, where my auntie Linda, my mom's sister, was really instrumental in like helping me to understand like, hey, this is not a character flaw. This is just the reality of what happened. And your parents aren't defined by how they died, but by how they live their lives. And it took me that many years to even get to a place where I could listen to her say that they died of overdose. So both of my parents, within 5 hours of each other, both of my parents ingested a lethal amount of fentanyl. My mom was prescribed fentanyl pain patch. My dad was on Oxycontin. Both of them being prescribed these medications, but ultimately you can take the pain patch and put it in the freezer and cut it open and suck on the pain patch to get the high, right? So here's the thing. I think in this society, we have this vision of like what an addict is, right? And then, like this is the homeless man under the bridge, right? Shooting up heroin. That's not the case at all. Like everyone around us knows someone that is battling addiction, right? And a lot of times it's concealed. And my parents' battle with addiction was very concealed, very, very tight-knit under wraps. And I think a lot of that was because they felt the shame of it, the weight of it, the shame of it, knowing that again, there's this stigma and the stigma and the shame that's attached to it. And I think they were afraid to speak up and get the help that they needed.
Uh,
So they just completely, did everything they could to hide it from people, even though finances were in a complete disarray. They would ask to borrow money here and there, but people just, they didn't ask a lot of questions because my parents really didn't answer a lot of questions, right? So it was just like, all right, this is life. Like, they're taking their prescriptions, they're getting out of bed in the morning, they're going to work, like everything's fine. Um, but both of my parents literally were so addicted to the medication they were on, yes, prescribed to them, that it got to the point where they had to take it as not prescribed, right?
mhm.
Had to take it in a different form so that they could get the healing that they needed, not just from the chronic pain, but
Right.
now from being dope sick, right? They're now sick, very, very sick because they don't have the medication to, pull them through it.
Do you think some of those individuals, maybe your mom and dad, they justify it by saying, but I'm getting this from a doctor, so it can't be bad?
Absolutely. I think there was a moment in time that my parents felt that way very much. And I think, and I know that because I look back at some of the medical records, and my mom used to, like, kind of journal, because she actually had to file for disability and hire an attorney to get it, pushed through. And going back and reading some of these documents from her, journaling, like, she was so by the book. I mean, so buttoned up, so by the book. She was the glue of the family. Like, if
Mhm.
my dad could buy everything in the world and spend every penny he had, he would. My mom, on the other hand, was reeling them in constantly. Butch, we don't have enough time for this. We don't have enough money. We can't do this. Like, reel it in, baby.
Mhm.
So, they definitely balanced each other out in that essence. But like, my mom was so by the book, and like reading these um journal entries, of how, like, waking up, how I feel, what I took. It's just like you realize that, like, she felt like she was doing everything she was told.
Right.
Do this and this is the outcome.
Mhm.
And I think that for the most part, for a while, it did what it said it would do.
Yeah.
But then the piece of it that people weren't aware of, and still often aren't, is that, man, in an instant you flip a switch and suddenly you're addicted to it. And like, it is almost impossible to get off of it without some sort of intervention or some sort of help to, make an adjustment and go in a different direction and not be reliant on that substance to function.
Knowing what you know now about your mom and dad, I know it doesn't change any love. It doesn't change your feelings at all. But what would you say to them right now if you had a moment and you had 60 seconds or 90 seconds to speak to them? What would you be telling your mom and dad right now?
Woo, 90 seconds. Okay, let me look at the clock. I've had
I'm
to
not
get real
timing
good,
you. You just
Yeah,
take all the time you need. But I'm just
yeah,
saying, that if you had
yeah.
that moment to speak, what would you tell them?
I mean, it's wild because I will say, in the TV industry, like, we've gotten really good at, like, condensing, you get 30 seconds, ready, set, go, ball's about to be snapped. You got 30 seconds,
Yeah.
hurry up. Um, I will say this. It, thinking about where I am now and where I've come, as hard as it's been to live my life without them, as hard as it's been to navigate life without my parents, I will say this: Mom and Dad, I love you now more than ever.
Wow.
And people might sit there and think, well, how can you love someone more now that they're gone and they've been gone for this long? And I think a lot of that is because of the legacy that they left behind, and that legacy that I used to try to protect by sharing bits and pieces of their story, not sharing it truthfully, openly, honestly.
Hmm.
And now that I've found my voice in all of this, I feel like I'm now a voice for them. And ultimately, the shame that they inherited and they felt, that they tried to cry out and silently cry out for that help, I've now become that person and sort of that bridge and that pathway for other people that are just crying and screaming inside, help me, help me.
Mm.
And I would just say that my parents, the impact that they're having on others is so profound. As painful as it's been to have lost them in the way that we did, I feel like their presence and their love is now more profound than it ever has been. And that, to me, just makes me feel so grateful that I can continue to carry on their legacy. And it's not just a memory, that
Yeah.
it's a living legacy.
That is so good. That is so good. Oh, so what would
Mm.
you tell that teenager, that young college student, maybe who has parents that that they're starting to notice are following in that same track of what you have just described, what would you say to them as far as how they could help, how they could encourage? What would you say to them?
Yeah. I think one thing that I look back on, I feel like I'm a professional storyteller and a professional question asker. I didn't ask a whole lot of questions back then. And I think a lot of it was because my parents didn't want to answer them. And I felt like I stay in my lane. I do what I'm going to do. My parents are fine. They're the heroes. They are the rock, the solid foundation here. They're invincible. And I think that's what I would encourage. Ask questions. Be curious. If you have any questions at all, ask those questions. You don't have to do it in an attacking sort of way. It's a loving sort of way. Have conversations. Hey, I've noticed this looks a little different, or this has been a little off. Are you sure you're okay? And you might not get an answer that you expect out of the gates. You might not get that answer, but the more that you continue to kind of dig in on those questions, and if you are noticing behavior changes, you're noticing something just seems off, eventually you'll get those answers. And again, the answers might be painful, and you might know, like, okay, like this person needs to get help, but you're going to open up that pathway, right? And you're almost going to give them permission to ask for help, because I think sometimes people feel so just ashamed that they feel like they don't have the ability to say, I need help, right? And so you almost give them permission. And so I would say, if you have loved ones, people that are battling it, ask more questions, be loving about it, but ask more questions. Talk to people that talk to resources, and maybe people that have gone through this before, and say, hey, what do I look for? How do I have this conversation? Can you help me have this conversation? And then when that conversation happens, what are the steps to getting that person the help they need? Because here's the thing. As devastating as this was, as tragic as this was, and as hard as addiction is, substance use disorder is no joke. And it is something that is just a lifelong battle. But what I would want to say about that too is, I think people get that in their mind, that this is a constant battle. Like, this is an uphill battle. It's a no-win situation. I want to encourage people that there is hope in recovery. And it is very, very, very possible to put in the work, to take the necessary steps to find recovery, and to do recovery really well, and find a quality of life that you never, ever experienced before.
Right. And
And
still
a sense
become
of
successful.
gratitude,
Yeah.
and become successful,
Yeah.
and have gratitude, and literally have a lens. Because here's what I try to remind people. Like, our experiences create a lens for us, right? So like, my experiences in my life create a special, unique lens for me that I get to view the world through, right? And so now you get a choice. You get to decide how you want to view the world, right? You can take that lens and use it as a gift, and go do something special with it, or you could literally toss that lens in the trash and say, nah, I don't want you today. I'm not going that path. But that's the key to all this, right? Is how are you going to respond? How are you going to use your experiences and the gifts that you've been given to make a difference in someone else's life and in the lives of others? Because it is finding your purpose, right? When you go to work every day, you might be on this 9 to 5 grind that you're just like, oh, like this is just a grind, like, but finding meaning and purpose in it, right? Finding purpose in what you do, finding those opportunities to impact other people's lives. That's where you're really going to make a difference. And I just, I think that's the biggest thing, is I would just encourage people is to find joy, find meaning and purpose in their lives. And this is my mantra: fall in love with your story, right? Every single chapter, when you open that book of life, you're going to see chapters in there that absolutely suck so bad you want to rip them out, throw them in the trash. But guess what? At the end of the day, those chapters are there. They're etched in your storybook of life. But oh, by the way, you now have a choice. How are you going to respond when you flip the page? Are you going to use that chapter and dwell on it? Or are you going to say, you know what? This is ammunition for me. This is only building up my tool belt and my resilience. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it to go to war. I'm going to use it to battle, to fight. Because then the next time you go through something, you've now got this in your tool belt. You say, wow, like, I got through this. I survived. Fall in love with your story.
That is so good.
Fall in love with your story. Own it. Embrace it. Every single chapter. Find joy and meaning in every chapter, because I'm telling you, it'll make a difference in your life, and it'll just give you purpose when you wake up every morning.
Yeah, yeah, that is so good, Lauren Sisler. Now, in addition to being an athlete, ESPN reporter, wife, mom, public speaker, because you're doing a lot of public speaking, you're now an author.
I know.
What is up with
crazy,
that?
Right? I know. It's crazy.
So tell me, how long have you been working on that? Is it like from the live story or?
Yeah, so it's crazy because it's been a long process, right? So I actually ended up I really more or less self-published, but it's kind of a hybrid model now that a lot of people are utilizing. So in theory, it's actually supposed to be a shorter time span. It's really whatever you make it, but it still ended up taking us about 2.5 years. And I say us, so my co-writer, Holland Webb, he is phenomenal. Really, and I'm so thankful I actually had someone because at the end of the day, like I'm a conversationalist, like I don't know how to write a book, but I still wrote the book. But having someone that just pulled out some of the deepest, darkest, like grittiest thoughts
Yeah,
and
yeah.
emotions and experiences, because I think sometimes we all are good at sugarcoating things. And I think he pulled things out of me that I never would have been able to pull out of myself. And so it's just like, okay, so for 2.5 years, it's just a lot of back and forth. It's adding all these things, learning of all these stories, meeting these new people, and recollections of the story on March 24th of 2003 that my recollection of it's different because I wasn't in the house when it happened. I
Right.
wasn't there at home. Nobody was there. But then having the conversation with the deputy that showed up that day, what was his recollection of it? What did he recall from that day? What resonates and stands out to him? And it's piecing all these things together to now have this amazing. I need to get
Ah,
paperback, hardcover. To have a book with, these words inside to be able to say like, like this is where I hope to meet people in the middle. This is where I hope to meet people where they're at, whether they're dealing with addiction, substance use. Addiction comes in all shapes and
yeah.
sizes. But shame is the critical piece of all this, right? Because we all deal with shame.
Mhm.
Everyone's dealt with shame in some way, shape, or form, whether it's a choice they've made, a mistake they've made, gotten fired from a job, gone through a divorce, gone through an infidelity, you name it, right? Everyone's been faced with shame. So my goal is to kind of meet people where they're at and say, look, like this is your opportunity now to take all the chapters of your life, piece them together, find the gifts, find the blessings, find everything in between, and use them to build a foundation for a better life and a more resilient life and a more purposeful and joyful life. And so that's really my goal through Shatterproof, right? Is to recognize that we have this opportunity to be shatterproof, right? When we feel like our life has been shattered into a million pieces, let's pick up those pieces, create this beautiful little disco ball of sorts, and let's dance through it, right? Let's find the joy again. And I think that's where it's just important to lean into that. And the book has definitely helped me to do that in this process of healing. And I hope that someone else will find some of those same things and opportunities to find healing and perspective as well.
This is why I wanted you on right here. This is so good. You have helped
Wow.
so many people. All right, so before I let you go, I have to ask this question. Where did the sideline shimmy come from?
Oh. Good. Hold on.
So did
So,
it did it just
it's
happen and get caught on camera, or was it
yeah,
planned?
basically that's what happened, which by the way, in the subtitle of my book, so it's Shatterproof, and then it's how I overcame the shame of losing my parents to opioid addiction and found my sideline shimmy, right? So the reason that's in there is because the sideline shimmy was actually something back when 2019 is when I first started working on game packages where I was out at a game every single week. And little did I know I'm out there dancing like on the sidelines to kind of shake off the nerves because everyone says, do you still get nervous? Heck yeah, I get nervous.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I get so nervous, right? So shaking off the nerves and it was just a way for me to like ground myself, right? Get grounded and like, okay, shake off the nerves. Let's
Uh-huh.
redistribute some of this nervous energy. And so I would dance. What was being caught on camera, because little did I know that even when the red tally light's not on, they still roll it.
Oh,
Cameras are always rolling. So I had to know that. I was like, all right. And so it was funny because El Habel, she's up in Bristol, and she ends up sending me this clip, and she's like, hey, I want to send you this. And she's like, you've been doing this like every single week, and we've been like watching you do this from back here in Bristol, but we didn't want to make fun of you or make you feel like embarrassed. And I was like, embarrassed? I said, I'm the one over here dancing like a goofball. So nevertheless, it became a thing and it became therapy. And I posted on social media at some point. I was just like, oh, apparently, cameras are always rolling. Note to self.
no, yeah, let
And
me
it just
remember
kind of
that for
blew
next
up.
time. That
Yeah.
is so
And it
good
just
because I
became
mean
a
you're
thing.
you're pulling people in. People are showing up to do the sideline shimmy with you.
Yeah. Showing up to do it with me. Yeah. And I always talk to the players now. I'm like, come on. I said, y'all have a good game out there. We'll get a little sideline shimmy celebration in. It'll be fun. It'll be a good time.
That is so good. Lauren Sisler, You are a remarkable woman, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk and to help people, because I really believe your story, whether it's through public speaking, whether it's through your new book or this podcast, you are helping a lot of people, and you are textbook of taking a tragedy and turning it into a triumph. And I want to thank you for doing that, because you're helping a lot of people.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. It's been awesome reconnecting with you, Mickey, and from the layers of CBS 42 to where you're at now. I love what you're doing as well, and bringing joy to people's lives. So you, my friend, are doing such great work as well. So thank you for continuing that and finding yourself in this journey, finding your joy and purpose. So kudos and clap to you, falling in love with your story. And let's carry on this conversation, keep this thing going, making some impact, and let's catch up soon, my friend. All right.
I would love it. I would love it. And the one thing I'm glad that you're not in the studio is that I don't have to attempt to do the sideline shimmy. So
That's right. I can't make you do it.
I'm very
right?
thankful. I was like, when I found out it was by video, I'm like, okay, good.
Oh,
good.
yeah.
Because I was wondering, because no rhythm. Thank you so much. We love you.
All right. Love you too. Bye.